what's up, everybody? This is Gary Holt from Exodus and formerly from Slayer, and you're listening to The Razor's Edge.
Welcome back to The Razor's Edge, where tonight we have Philly and Joe from Gama Bomb. Welcome, lads.
Hello. Thanks for having us, Tim.
It's great to have you here. So, before we talk about all things Gama Bomb, I just wanted to jump back in time to before the days of the bands. So, how did you both first get into heavy music?
Joe, I'm going to eat a biscuit while Joe answers this question. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, me and Philly kind of got to know each other on the first or second day of secondary school, and we're listening to kind of stuff like, what was it, like Michael Jackson, stuff like that. But Philly's brother had a Live After Death on double cassette, and Philly brought it in, and I copied it, and we were like, "Oh my god, this is cool!"
Did I? I didn't know that. I don't remember that. Did I bring it in? You copied it.
Sure did. There you go. What is your first memories, Philly, of? Well, I guess you had big brothers, didn't you, who were heavy metal dudes?
Yeah, you were pretty, like, when I met Joe, we were both 11, as you said, in first year of secondary school. But like, Joe was already listening to Ugly Kid Joe because his brother had bought him the album as a joke because of his name. But he was listening to Ugly Kid Joe, and Joe's mum was like a hippie back in the, still is a hippie, but was an OG hippie back in the 60s. So you definitely grew up listening to Cream and Hendrix and hearing Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Joe definitely knew more of it, probably by osmosis. But I'm with my mum and dad, I'm the youngest of 7 altogether, of 9 brothers and sisters. Like, there's 9 of us altogether, but with my mum and dad there's 7. And so that meant my older brothers and sisters were teenagers in the 80s. So, you know, a lot of music, like a lot of the goth, new romantic, and the hair metal, and the sort of indie rock. So grew up in high school, there was a lot of Pogues, The Clash, The Cure, Fields of the Nephilim, The Mission, Sisters of Mercy, the Smiths, Fugazi. Yeah. You know, even then, like later, Sonic Youth, Blur, Weezer, all that stuff was played at home. So I'd always heard it. Didn't love all of it, but I always heard that stuff. And then, as Joe was saying, one day my older brother Gavin, who has amazing taste in music, went out for the day, and as usual, I opened the drawer under his bed to rummage through his tapes and his CDs, and I saw Live After Death. I put it on, Phantom of the Opera, and I think that was kind of a moment for me. Yeah. So that's kind of how we got in. And as Joe says, I think he and I and lads who were close to us were always interested in that. Yeah. You know, we were all kind of the younger brothers of rockers in the town, grunger type people. So there was always a vague sense that was the music you were going to enjoy, and a sense that being in a band was a cool thing to do. So it was kind of in the DNA. Yeah,
and you say you schooled together as when you were 11. So when did you first start thinking about the formation of what would become Gama Bomb?
Well, Joe, we didn't really, did we? Like, we did other stuff, and I wasn't really a singer.
Yeah, like I think as well, like a big part of it for me and Philly when we were kids, like as in 15-year-olds, was to write funny lyrics that we liked, you know, and like things that kind of amused us. Like, we were big time into Bruce Lee movies or Dave Mustaine lyrics, and like we would just write parodies of those. And whenever we first met Luke Graham, who was like the original kind of other founding member, he had exactly, as Philly will tell you, the same sort of kind of temperament, didn't he?
Yeah, he was more low-key and reserved. Joe and I had played in a covers band, as you do when you're 16. Sort of our crowning achievement was that we played on St. Patrick's night in a social sports club in Newry, in the bar, when we were 16 years old. And, you know, I got a kiss and everything. It was very like, you know, that was a big end of the movie moment for us for me as a teenager. And Luke was a guy who we sort of tangentially knew from the youth centre, and he came in, and as far as I know, he left because he was so offended by this, how crap we were. Because he was actually very good at playing the guitar by that point. But I remember I had seen Luke around in the youth centre thing. You have to remember, after the Troubles, there was a lot of investment in Northern Ireland, which isn't there now. There was a lot of investment in youth programs, in cultural stuff. Like, a lot of money was put into that, and most towns had a kind of a venue. So in Newry, that was called the Magnet Centre. And I had seen Luke in there with his girlfriend at the time. And he had never really talked to me because Luke doesn't really talk. But then I remember Joe suddenly had all these tapes, and Joe was like, yeah, well, I was hanging out with Luke. And I was like, oh, right, so you're getting to know Luke. So they kind of became buddies. And he had all these cassettes. So I remember there was Once Upon the Cross by Deicide, Among the Living by Anthrax. Was there another? Joe was already into Metallica at that point, but who else was there on that, Joe? There was a couple other cassettes. Oh, Game Over and The Plague, wasn't it?
There was a huge thing, like, and I guess this is it's such a weird kind of way to look at it, but like around 1999 or 2000, our local library had like a massive sale of all their tapes because they said, cassettes are kind of done with, so we want to get rid of them. And we got like Nuclear Assault albums, Anthrax, Halloween, and stuff like that. And there was sometimes kind of like, I remember when we would first listen to Halloween or Nuclear Assault, we would kind of be laughing, being like, this music is so fast. This is funny, like, you know, why is this music so sped up sounding, like, you know?
Yeah, and we would and I suppose it coincided as well with a time in our lives where, like a lot of younger people in Northern Ireland, we were smoking hash. And I think getting the giggles and putting on this music, it wasn't like we were thrashing around the place, unself-consciously headbanging or whatever. We were sort of, I don't know, we were enjoying it on several levels. We were really enjoying the music, and we were also kind of ironic about it. And our friends who weren't into this were listening to it too. So by osmosis, sort of a whole group of us who were otherwise listening to totally different music, we were all listening to, say, Bob Dylan, or we had mates who liked Marilyn Manson, or, you know, we were all getting into classic rock and Led Zeppelin and stuff. We started listening to thrash. Tim, you probably didn't ask for this much history, but that's good. We were teenagers and we were finding a new thing. And at that point, I don't think, like, although Joe and I were in a cover band who did like a Metallica cover, and we did like So What by the Anti-Nowhere League, and, you know, all that Garage Days kind of stuff. We were doing the easier songs from Garage Days, and I was the bass player and Joe was the guitarist and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later that there was a sense that we were going to do a band or whatever. I didn't have a huge amount of commitment or skill. So I think it was Luke Luke was very steeped in thrash and studied in it, and he could play the riffs way better than we could. And he, you know, had a patch jacket and he was quite serious. And I think it was him and Joe really that wanted to be in a band. And I just got like him in by accident, you know.
Yeah, so jumping forward a bit, obviously over the years you've had a couple of lineup changes. You've talked about Luke. You've now got Chris in on drums. Chris was your touring drummer for 4 years, I think, and now he's officially a permanent member. So was that a 4-year audition? Or
kind of, yeah. Like Joe, like not fair, but kind of. You know, what's
this is going to sound so stupid, right? But the dude had like a RoboCop tattoo on one arm and like a Predator tattoo on the other arm.
It's Terminator on one arm. He doesn't like RoboCop.
Yeah, that was what it was. Was that like he had the Terminator on one arm and Predator on the other arm, and he didn't like RoboCop, and we were like, we have lots of songs about RoboCop, right?
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah, Joe might be slightly overcooking it, but yeah, it was a bit of a. I remember Chris said it one morning when he'd been rehearsing with us, and he'd been with us for a while, and he was like, "What's going on?" And me and Joe were really hungover trying to make breakfast. And I just turned around to him and I said, change is slow, you know, and it is. Change is slow. We were in a situation where, you know, Paul was with the band. I don't even know how long, but like 15 years. I don't know how long Paul was in the band, and is one of our best friends. And it's like, it's kind of hard to explain. You don't just go leaping or whatever. Like, we're one of the things about us as a band that has allowed us to survive despite never really making loads of money or anything or achieving huge acclaim or anything, is because we're friends and we like doing it together. And that's not like other bands where you're just like, out goes the drummer, in comes the new one.
Yeah.
You know, in order to be a creative partner in the band and, you know, to be in that group of friends, that takes time. So that's what my thinking on it was anyway. And, you know, we wanted to make sure he was a good lad. And he's a great lad. So, yeah, he's a member and we're very glad. And he's a great part of the chemistry of the band as well now, you know. Yeah. He's an incredibly tight live drummer. He's the tightest live drummer we've ever had. So that's a big step up for us. He can play anything that anybody ever wrote for us, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. He is a phenomenal drummer. So, so up to present day, then you're about to release Necronomicon Automation. I've had it on repeat.
Necronomicon Automaton.
Automaton. Sorry, I knew I pronounced it incorrectly.
We've really hamstrung ourselves with this title, lads. We really have. What I thought at first was a great, funny rhyming pun. It's an albatross. Let's be honest.
It is. I was fearing beforehand. I'm not going to get this right.
Necronomicon Automaton. It's simple. Necronomicon Automaton. It's fine. It's great.
I'll try again later. So, why an EP now and why not an album?
Joseph.
You know what? Like, we have a history of overwriting for records and stuff, and like in the past, there were kind of things like Half Cut, which we did with the Tales from the Grave album, and yeah, I think like there was like always a sense that like there were half baked songs that weren't particularly ready or album worthy. And then, like, in the last year or two, we've done a couple of things like Thunder Over London or the Pogues cover, super album worthy. So it's like not really a surprise to see that like we have like a bunch of songs left from the record that are worth a punt on this, like, you know.
Yeah, and it was like we overwrote, as Joe said, and it was a very productive and really creative period when we were making Bats, and I think. Well, I would say this now because we're releasing it, but I think all the songs had something to them, and those four, for one reason or another, not for any particular reason, didn't make it forward to the album. And it was like we came back and looked at them this year. We hadn't listened to them in a year and a half. When we listened to what we had, it was like, well, these are absolute bangers. And also, we wanted to just, like, as you said, Chris has now joined the band. This was when James was the drummer. He recorded some drums for those songs. So it was, you know, when James was making records with us. So it was a bit like, that's James Stewart from Decapitated.
Yeah.
So we were like, right, well, we want to draw a line. We want to have a period where we've cleared out the closet of things, and these things are worth doing something with. And, you know, we touched them up and we added pieces to them, and it was like, actually, this is great. They're really good songs. So it's good. It comes from a very fertile period. I think Bats as an album is one of my favorite things we've done, and I think these four songs deserve to have their own little moment. And you know what else? We're not really right now in the middle of a huge work ethic with writing. So, like, well, me and Joe are writing a lot, and we always do, but like we're not in the middle of prepping an album or anything. So it was like, okay, well, let's give people something. Let's do something just to mark that we're here. You know, Bats was 2023 actually.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? They came out in 23. So we're like, you know, we're kind of getting on with things, and it's like, may as well have something this year, and then maybe we'll do a record next year. You know, these are the questions we ask ourselves, you know. So yeah, I'm delighted that they're getting out there. I really am. It's like never thought that these things that we disregarded at the time were this good.
And I was looking at the album art, and before I'd listened to the album, and I thought, or the EP, sorry, and I thought, oh, they're going a bit more serious here. But then I put it on, and it
does look a bit more moody, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But no, it's traditional Gama Bomb. I love Nunchucks. I've had that on all day. It's a brilliant song. Obviously, your inspiration in the past, you've talked about 80s, 90s comics, movies, those sort of influences. So what influences did you draw on for this group of songs?
Joe, what do you got there? Open your drawer of influences.
Well, you know, I guess like Philly would probably say the same, that like there's a bit of a kind of more Iron Maiden-y influence on, especially like you know, Intro of the Deceiver, and you know, what's the other song with Panzer in the title, Philly?
Panzer.
Yeah. But like, you know, like as you said, Nunchucks is a very straight ahead Gam Bomb thrasher song, so it sounds like exactly like a lot of songs you would expect us to do. But I think the other three songs do have a bit of a more, would you say, Philly, a post sort of Sea Savage kind of sound about them?
Yeah, I think so. So I think like Necronomicon is, I think it's quite overkill-y, but sodomy as a song, and the influence behind that, which was your question, sorry Tim, was where did that come from? When we were making Bats, I went through, I tend to hyperfixate on topics and learn everything I can about them. And I did that with like spiritualism. So I was learning about like the 1920s after World War One. So many people had been killed, and there was so much unaddressed trauma and all this kind of thing that there was a huge obsession in the West with spiritualism. And weirdly, in Ireland, just after the revolution in Ireland, before really the collapse of the economy and before the church really got their claws in Ireland and made it the sort of more conservative country that it became, in the 20s, the late 10s and into the 20s there, in the late 20s, there was a big creative and sort of alternative thinking boom in Ireland. So spiritualism was a massive thing. And with that song, I had also, at the time, I'm not really doing it as much now, I was writing short fiction with a friend, and I wrote this story about a living automaton girl who, lives with Queen Victoria in this story. And when I wrote that, I was like, okay, well, these things are all coming together, spooky living mechanical girl, seances, all this kind of stuff. So then the pun just came to my mind, and I was like, okay, well, the song's either going to be called Necronomicon Automaton or Ouija board. I was like, this one's better. And that's where that song came from. Nunchucks was like, look, we've been to Japan twice now. It's very hard not to write songs about Japanese stuff, when you have such an awesome time and get treated like a king in Tokyo. It's like, well, obviously you would need to keep writing songs with that. But, also it's about a thing that Joe and I love to talk about, which is in the 90s, because of the Ninja Turtles, there was a spate of kids knocking themselves out with nunchucks, which I think is just one of the funniest trends. Like the way kids used to tango each other and deafen each other by slapping each other on the ears. Yeah. 90s scandals, Pop-Tarts popping out of the toaster and sticking to your face and melting your skin. 90s stuff, that makes you shoot blanks. That kind of, Slim Fast has maggots in it.
Yeah.
All the 90s was that we all remember in the UK and Ireland so well. So, yeah, we wanted to write a song about, acting cool with nunchucks and then knocking yourself out. So that's what that song's about. And then Necropanzer was just a cool pun that we then, I absolutely love The Sentinel by Judas Priest. We were like, okay, I said to Joe, let's write a song like The Sentinel. And Joe went away and just came back with this song that's very like The Sentinel. Very, very like The Sentinel. So that song is literally like, let's us cosplay and do The Sentinel. And what's the fourth song on? Necropanzer, Necronomicon, Nunchucks, and
Intro Deceiver.
Okay, God, it's so hard to explain this, man. There's so many in-jokes. So, like, when you're 13, when you're 13 and you stick on, does Battery have an acoustic intro? Yeah, Battery has a nice intro.
Yeah.
And you try to scare your mum by putting on the nice intro to a metal song, going, what do you think of this music? Oh, is this nice? And then your mum goes, oh, yeah, that sounds nice. And then you go, ha ha, got you, mum. That'll teach you to raise me or whatever. So we were just laughing at how brilliant a trend that is among children. And we were like, let's write a song about the amazing feeling you get as a 12-year-old when you scare your mum with a heavy metal song with a soft intro. And that's what Intro is. And if you read the lyrics, they're literally about that. It's as if you've transformed into a heavy metal monster when you've scared your mum with this kind of nonsense. I literally did that, so that's where that came from. So look, I mean, it's when you explain them, it sounds insane. But I can assure your listeners that they're all very accessible and enjoyable heavy metal songs.
I can assure them that they are as well, because I've been listening.
And look, I mean, we also, we always pride ourselves on writing songs that are topical, and not every song you're going to do has a serious subject matter to it or something that's about current events or our political opinions. A lot of the time, you're just kind of creatively exercising yourself by telling crazy stories, so that's what these songs pretty much are.
Excellent. So over the years, you've been through a few labels. Obviously, you started on Earache, and you've been through AFM. I won't mention the face you've just pulled there.
Next question. Let's move on. We're out of time. No, sorry, I'm only joking. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, it's fine. So, from the band's perspective, how are the labels compared over the years?
We don't answer that, Joe. You don't have to answer that. You literally don't have to answer that question. I'm joking.
We grew up in the era when there was still kind of tour support for bands. So, like, whenever someone like Earache or AFM signed you, they wanted to put 20 grand into putting you on tour in America or wherever they thought your market was, you know, and those kind of days are over. So, like, it's weird. Like, we went through kind of an era of Philly. It wasn't kind of 360 deal, was it? But whenever we signed with Earache, they had a hand in our merch, and you know, but it was definitely a two-way street. Like, you know, for all the stuff that you could give out about that, we were given incredible opportunities to kind of go and do stuff that there's no way now a new band, even like, I don't know, like Green Lung or Hell Ripper they wouldn't get the same sort of availability of support where the label would say, we'll pay 20 grand onto this tour for you, no problem.
Yeah, that is true. And you know, they were a label from an even earlier period, and they were accustomed to treating bands like rock stars. And like, they did stuff, like Earache did stuff for us that I couldn't believe. You know, we did a European tour and a nightliner with other bands, and when the tour started, we went to what they call Theatre House Square in Nottingham, where their office was, or Opera House Square, whatever it's called. And they took us into this big, like, say, a big spar or something, and Tigby, who ran the label, went, get trolleys and supermarket sweep. He was like, go ahead, supermarket sweep. And we literally, we walked through the place just shoving shelves and shelves of biscuits and nonsense, and like, you know, literally ran around the shop doing supermarket sweep in real life. And then he just took out the company card and paid for it, and we put all that stuff in the bus. And we were such idiots. We didn't clear out the booze. We cleared out all the stupid snacks or whatever. You know, we should have gone up and said all those bottles of whiskey, throw them in. But, you know, like, so like, and we got to go to America and did a lot of cool stuff. I mean, as with all these things, the industry was changing very rapidly. I don't know if personality-wise we were the best fit for that. AFM was a different deal. They were a bit more hands-off, maybe too hands-off. But, like, they still believed in the band a lot, and they gave us a lot of support at a time when we were actually in legally quite a circumspect situation, and they had faith in us and they signed us and stuff. So, you know, and I think,
yeah, you know, it's not a secret to be able to say that, like, whenever we had to fight our way out of doing the Earache deal, like, FM did show us a lot of solidarity, as you said, Philly, by, like, you know, being threatened not to sign the band and then saying, no, we're going to do it anyway, you know. Which was great, but as you said, like, I think a big thing whenever you're dealing with producers, labels, anybody, artist, is if people are kind of really interested in doing it, it'll make you feel you have lots of confidence in them, you know?
Yeah, that's it. And, you know, that was cool. So all labels have pluses and minuses, you know.
Yep.
With Earache, they were a big rock star label. With AFM, they would left you to be to your own devices. And, you know, with Prosthetic, they're operators, you know, they're real professionals at operating the way the market is now. You know, they're survivors of this, and, you know, they know how to tactically make things work. They know how to make Spotify work, and they know how to make others, you know, but all labels have strong points and weak points. But, like, our relationship with Prosthetic, our current label, is great. Like, amazingly, their founder, EJ Johansson, but EJ was a fan of the band, and he saw me on Twitter basically saying something about Earache, and he was all like, "Oh yeah, I guess, like, sounds like you got a story there." And I DM'd him, and I actually said, "If you want to show them, if you want to really show them, sign us." And he DM'd me back, and he was like, "What's your email?" And that's how the conversation started. Literally just talked to him, and we made friends. So yeah, you know, we've never been in that position that other bands, like, say, friends of ours have, where they have, like, say, a sole operator or something like Hell Ripper. That's a very different setup. That's one individual who gets the benefit of being in a band. We're a collective of people. We're mates who are in a band. So being DIY is difficult because, let's say, 4 or 5 year mates, you all do something together. If one person was shipping out all the merch from their house and having to go to the post office all the time, why would everybody get a fifth of that? So we are like, we run it like a business, but we're not like one-man band. And I think as a one-man band, it's easier to be picky about labels and picky about royalties and picky about, you're owning the master and what you spend your money on and all this kind of thing. We don't have that luxury because we have a legacy and because we're a group of people. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't think we were put here on earth to be businessmen, but you kind of have to act like it a bit in order to survive, you know. So we self-manage. We don't have a manager. We are the managers.
Yeah, it makes sense. So in a week or so, you're hitting the road for the start of the Crawford Arms on the 17th. You've got some Irish dates in May, and then you're back in the UK in October. So we all know Gama Bomb show is an absolute blast. So what do you have in store for us this time around?
So what are we going to do? We'll be on drugs. I'm joking.
We're definitely trying to do a bit of everything, you know, and I guess because we've got 8 albums now and a bunch of EPs and, like, you know, etc., it gets harder and harder to try and get a set that's got a bit of everything in it, like, you know. So
yeah.
But we try, like, we're busting out a bunch of songs that we haven't played ever with this lineup, or we haven't played in 10 years or 15 years. So it'll be cool to kind of see what the reception is, I guess, like, you know, because
and I think there's stuff in there.
We're kind of used to the Earache albums or the new albums having a really good reception. So there's some stuff from the AFM albums or the early days we're hoping to or not wow people with.
Yeah, so and it's a long set. Like, our show is bigger now. We've got a 90-minute set. Yeah. We played in Tokyo at the end of last year in the summer or whatever. And the ask was to play 2 90-minute shows. And obviously we have played 90-minute shows in the past, but that's not really been our standard set. So it was a real challenge to us to assemble 180 minutes of music or whatever, which we did. And I think the experience of doing 2 nights in a row, 90 minutes, 2 different sets, showed us that actually that's a more rounded show. And so now we're bringing that to it. So our show is now 90 minutes. Snowy will be there, I think. His lawyers have sent us a letter saying he has to be part of it, so he's going to be there. And yeah, like as Joe says, we're mixing it up. You know, there's more songs from Tales and older records on there, and some of the AFM stuff that we don't really play at all. So, you know, I'm excited about it. I've got some really cool new stupid clothes to wear. But I think, like, we're doing something new, so it's slightly out of the comfort zone with some of the songs. But we're also very well drilled. We've spent the last couple of years playing really good live shows and developing a great, like, buzz. And, you know, we're in the audience and we're involved with people at the gigs and stuff. And, you know, I think about it a lot, even in my day-to-day life. I find myself thinking, you know, when you do these shows, how do you reach people and how do you make them, like, how do you make them feel joy? You know, how do you make people go mad? Yeah. And we think about it a lot. And I think I'm excited to go out and see how annoying we can be.
Well, we're looking forward to it, and I always love a Gama Bomb show. I was just thinking, when did I first see you? And I can't remember when I first saw you. I know the second time I saw you was on the Bonded by Blood tour, when you were out with Bonded by Blood.
2008.
Was it?
Oh, yeah, 2008.
Like yeah,
Well,
where
was that?
That would have been Wolverhampton at what was then the Little Civic. I don't think it exists anymore. The building's still there, but it's not a venue now.
Great venue. That was a great venue. Yeah, I remember it well. Little Civic, it had the big barrier and everything.
Yeah.
Geez, man, you've been around the block. Yeah, so still have. That's 16 years ago or whatever. 17.
Yeah, absolutely.
17 years ago. And look, here we are now, white stripes in the hair and none the wiser.
Absolutely. Necronomicon and Philly, it's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. Your album Necronomicon Necronomicon Automaton. The EP Necronomicon Automaton is out on Prosthetic on April the 18th, and your tour starts on the 17th. So good luck with it all.
Thanks so much. We'll see you on the road.
Thank you very much, bud.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you keep up to date with all of our interviews by subscribing to our channel. For all the latest news, reviews, interviews and more, head over to our website www.therazorsedge.rocks.